My name's Margaret, Jewell. I guess I have a PhD in genetics and I worked on turf grass, so a little bit outside. I currently run MLA's Environmental Sustainability R&D program. Yeah. Carbon farming isn't a sort of a term that I directly use a lot. Where I come from at MLA, we've obviously got our carbon neutral by 2030 target. And so what that is all about is how red meat producers can optimise their carbon use efficiency, which, if we go more technical, how can they maximise the amount of carbon that they're sequestering from the atmosphere through photosynthesis and either store that long-term in trees and soils, having benefits for their livestock productivity, or maximising the live weight gain that they're getting from that carbon. Obviously, when people are producing livestock, as part of the ruminant digestive process, methane is produced, but that's a waste product. So if we can redirect the lost food energy that's being converted to methane into a live weight gain, that's sort of what we're ultimately trying to achieve with our CN30 target, so that we can be improving productivity and efficiency, but at the same time reducing the amount of methane that livestock produces. When we're talking about red meat producers, ultimately it's actually maximising their productivity and efficiency of production. So obviously we're hoping, and it's very early days for carbon markets and a lot of other opportunities through the market for producers to reap rewards from carbon farming, but carbon farming is just good farming, so it is just maximising productivity and efficiency. There's financial benefits now through the Australian Carbon Credit Unit scheme. There's also international carbon markets where you can monetise carbon credits. They are, somewhat inaccessible to a lot of people, so some people are getting really good additional revenue from participating in those schemes, but it's not sort of fit for purpose for everyone. However, I think that is really emerging at the moment. So we're seeing that supermarkets, banks, other supply chain participants are wanting to demonstrate to consumers that they're producing products and supplying products that have, are able to demonstrate low net emissions. So I think that those rewards will start to become more real over the next few years. Cattle make up the vast majority, sheep very little. Goats are sort of 0.07% or something of the total red meat emissions for Australia. Saying that, we are doing research on goats to understand, some more details about the emissions that they produce. A lot of those numbers are based on sheep, and so we've just extrapolated them to goats. I don't probably have the knowledge about the various goat production systems in Australia to make too much of a comment, and it hasn't been a huge focus for us. All cows are fairly similar in that they produce a certain amount of emissions, which is related to the amount of digestibility or the quality and digestibility of the food that they're eating. What that means is if an animal's on grain or a really high quality diet, it's actually producing live weight gain faster, which is related to having a lower emissions profile. So technically, as the feed quality increases, so does the amount of emissions produced decreases. Like in Australia, there's not much that's just grain-fed and just grass-fed. It's generally, they spend the first part of their life on grass and then they'll move into a finishing phase in grain. Yeah. And having that finishing phase actually reduces the total emissions that those animals produce over their life. I work really strongly in the R&D side of things, and we are noticing that we're very much challenged by the lack of R&D funding that's available. Government are definitely trying to pull support together. They're working on developing their carbon farming outreach program, which is wonderful, and will help raise awareness amongst all producers across Australia. But I think it's one of those areas where if the money and the resources are available, we can put them to good use to support this transformation to happen faster.
Perfect.
Everyone's different. So depending on where people are located, what their rainfall is, what their soil types are, whether they can plant areas of their properties to trees without taking, too much of a hit on their livestock production, all of those things are important. I guess the very first thing that I believe producers should be doing is just that calculation. So we all say it, you can't manage what you don't measure, but doing that calculation of a baseline carbon account is really the first step in trying to understand what practices are available in particular circumstances that can try and improve your net position. When we're talking about carbon farming practices, they all have co-benefits. So if we're talking about putting trees on farm or regenerating areas of existing vegetation, we're actually improving biodiversity, as long as we're not sort of just doing monocultures of one species of tree. We're increasing the soil and water health in those areas. In some cases, we're also improving the productivity of livestock because we're providing shade and shelter for them, in addition to having that benefit of potentially a carbon revenue or benefit. I'm always quite surprised by the lack of awareness as well. So it's quite, I guess, fragmented who's receiving information. It's also, it can be a political thing, so people are sort of, have various levels of wanting to engage based on their beliefs and values. I think in general, probably the answer is no, and I think we can just be trying to continue to build that awareness, but at the same time, it can be really confusing. So we have to be able to do that in a way that reduces confusion amongst people. So look, I work for MLA, so I know a lot about the resources that we have, but we are a science-based organisation, so all of the resources that we've produced are underpinned by science, and we work with universities and research organisations to build it. Really good one-stop shop to just learn the basics about carbon with our carbon farming and carbon 101 e-learning modules. We've got a carbon calculator. We've also got a quick carbon calculator where you can just dabble in things. Carbon Edge is a sort of a 2-day workshop that we're developing, and there's other resources that will be rolled out as well. The federal government are developing their carbon farming outreach program. University of Melbourne and Ag Victoria have a lot of resources. A lot of the state government have resources. So the unbiased information is out there. And of course there are, consultants in the private world that can provide unbiased information. There's obviously some biased information coming through as well. So what we encourage producers to do is to just make sure, they're doing their due diligence on the information they're receiving and investigating whether or not that information is the best thing for them to sort of digest and work with.